Hi, I'm Greg Braun and welcome to the second episode of the Power of Quality vlog series. Today I'm again joined by Stacey Lewis, our Market Research and Insights Manager at REA, as we uncover the power of quality in the new homes market. Hello Stacey, how are you doing?
Hi Greg, how are you going today?
Not bad, not bad. I'm sitting in my apartment, as probably most people are right now, surrounded by new development.
Yeah, so today we're continuing our quality conversation, but focusing on the new homes market. So I guess to give you a bit of background, if for anyone who's listening, you weren't listening to the previous vlog that we recorded. When we set out to do this research, we wanted to explore the quality issues and that media coverage that we'd seen in the new apartments market. So to see if there has been an impact on buyers' perceptions or how that's flowing through to them. And we wanted to see if that was also having an impact in the new homes market, in the house and land space, on what people are thinking about and whether that's impacting their decision making.
Absolutely, sounds great. I guess when you hear about you hear in the media certain things, you wonder if kind of how much of it is isolated cases versus how much of it is kind of the general kind of national narrative. And I suppose that's why we do this research in realestate.com.au, is just to really understand what is going on at a national level, drill down into state-based discussions as well. And I think it's really important that we can give that full representative market view. And part of the reason we do this every year is because things do change. The conversation moves on. Different topics become more important or less important or more interesting or whatever it might be. So for us, it's really important to kind of keep our finger on the pulse. And can't wait to get into some of the detail with you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think this was actually an interesting topic because obviously at the time we were planning for the research, it was very topical. But now we're in the midst of COVID, so it's interesting kind of still revisiting this data, but also I think it's remained really relevant as well, even in the environment that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, well, obviously I've seen a sneak preview of the questions, and I know one of the two data points that are coming up, and really surprising, really interesting things about the new homes market that perhaps might surprise the listeners and the audience today. So maybe let's get into it. I have got in front of me a stat, which is an interesting one, I think, is that 57% of new home buyers are actually worrying about the quality of new homes in Australia. That feels really high to me. And I guess what I alluded to earlier is that I thought the concern was with new apartments, but maybe it's new homes as well. What have you got to say about that?
Yeah, so this was a little bit surprising to us because obviously our hypothesis going in was that with all of the media coverage, there would be a bigger impact in the new apartments market. But when we looked at the data, what we saw was actually the level of concern in the new apartments market and the new homes market was actually really similar. And digging a little bit deeper into some of the commentary that came back from buyers and the conversations we had with them, we heard that it wasn't so much a flow-on effect from the new apartments market because I think you could see from what buyers were saying that they recognise that those issues that were in the media are very specific to new apartments, like structural issues with the new apartment build or those cladding type things. It didn't look like that was kind of transferring across, but more so that it was this underlying quality kind of importance or concern that has been sitting there for a while, and we just no one's really been talking about it, I guess.
Was there anything with curiously, I know we looked into segments in this research as well, and upsizers and downsizers. Was there anything going on there?
Yeah, so that was something that I found really interesting when we looked at the different segments. So with the new homes market, what we heard was that upsizers and downsizers specifically, so they're your subsequent buyers, typically a little bit older, particularly your downsizers. They were more concerned about the quality of builds in the new homes market which is actually the opposite of what we heard for the new apartments market, where we saw that level of concern be higher among first home buyers and younger audiences, which I kind of thought makes sense for the apartments market, because obviously with your first home buyers, younger audiences, they're seeing things in the media, and that has an impact because they're inexperienced. But for the upsizes and downsizes, I was actually interested to hear what you thought about that as well, and how you might interpret that type of information.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. I guess, so my experience of buying a new apartment, I guess the thing you go to is quality. How you assess that, we'll come on to later, and it's a complicated thing. But I wonder, when you get into that kind of upsizer and downsizer, you're perhaps more experienced in the game. You've got something pre-existing that you've lived in. You've got that experience of what a house might provide you and how it might be built, and you're happy with that. So maybe you use that as a benchmark to buy a new home, and I wonder if there's something about extra cynicism in the market amongst these people, because they might be thinking that new homes are about just almost like build them high and build them cheap, just get them done, and what they're actually going to purchase is an inferior quality to the thing they've been living in. So I don't know if there's that experience means that they're a harder audience to crack or to please, or they've got more questions, or they've just got higher expectations. It's an interesting one. It might be a combination of those things. I guess the implication there is that you might actually have to work harder with these audiences as a new homes builder and developer, to convince them of your credentials, of your quality credentials in that space.
It's so interesting you say that, because I think even if you look at typically who is after buying a brand new home, it's very much kind of I guess skewed towards first home buyers, investors, and upsizes and downsizes tend to only be this like really small segment of the market. So that could absolutely be feeding into that.
Yeah, fantastic. So this other curious stat I've got from the research was that 80% of new home buyers highlighted quality as important in how they choose a new home. 80%, that's massive. So when we look at the other stat, which is again 77% highlighted quality assurance as a key benefit to buying new versus established, I guess it's both top of mind. They're looking for that quality, but it's also another reason for buying it in the first place. It's almost at odds in some ways. It's a super interesting sort of dichotomy of thought process that your typical buyer is going through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fascinating, and I think it's almost like, I was kind of thinking about it. It's almost like this risk assessment that they're going through. So they've got this wealth of information that they need to kind of churn through and understand where that quality equation kind of comes into that and how they can combat that. And it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a black and white, new versus established, or this versus that. It's what information do they have at hand and how do they process that? And that's kind of where they will end up when they're kind of trying to trade that off.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of moves nicely into this probably kind of a killer question for me in a way. And it's really about how buyers are assessing quality right now. What are they looking for? Now, my experience in this world, admittedly, again, with new apartments, is that you kind of rely a lot on gut instinct and trust. You have to put your faith into what's being told of you by the people you're being told it by. And there's a few other touch points, but it's quite a labor-intensive exercise, excuse me, for kind of finding that information that you do trust and then piecing it together to kind of create a story in your head that you're satisfied with, that quality is there. But we've got some interesting kind of numbers on that. What are the kind of the big things that people are looking for from that quality assessment framework, if you like?
Yeah, so one of the things that was quite interesting was when we looked at how people do, I guess, go through that process and make that assessment, is that the main things are relating to being able to look at things that have been previously built by builders, and being able to go to the display home and kind of touch and feel and see what what that quality looks like. And I think even more so, it is that being able to see something, not with the display home, obviously that's been put together in the last couple of might have been the last 12 months or the last 6 months or whatever, but being able to go and see something that has stood the test of time for the last 5-10 years, even, to kind of go, well, what does it look like down the track? So they can make that comparison point, as you mentioned, actually, with the established market as well, like how can they make it make sense in their world.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, that kind of touch and that look and feel. And I suppose if we're thinking about the upsides and downsides and stuff, we think about them as a more experienced cohort that we're assuming might need more convincing. This would be a great way to do that, to actually show them how it ages, how it suffers the test of time or stands the test of time. That would be a great kind of convincing factor, I think, for me, if that were the situation I was in. The other thing about touch and physical, I think it can be easy to ignore. We live in such a digital directed world. Everything we do and everything we talk about and read and see is largely digital. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the world around kind of slow journalism, and this idea of like magazines are coming back into vogue in the same way that records are, because people do, some magazines, not all, but some, in the same way that people can touch them and look and feel, and the fabric and the paper and all things like that. I guess there's still very much a world where people need that physical display suite. They want to go and see what they're getting, that maybe can't be quite as well translated into the digital space. So I think it's probably worth kind of keeping that in mind as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is one of those things where it's such a highly involved process, and it's such a big purchase, and considering a big proportion of the market is first home buyers. This is apart from getting married, this is it. Like, this is the biggest decision they're probably about to make.
Yeah.
And they want to be able to go and be a part of that process and be able to touch and feel and make sure they're kind of making that right decision.
Yeah, and I think importantly, you want to come away feeling some sense of guarantee or certainty that you're going to get what you're paying for, and how you translate that as a in that display suite and as a brand is really crucial.
Yeah, and even like when you think about that branding, it's also about being such a big decision. It's almost like they're taking that on as a part of themselves as well. So if they want, you have to enable them to be proud of that and be a part of that process, so that they will walk away. And that's where obviously you get all of your advocacy and all that kind of thing from as well.
Yeah. Well, in other of these, in this series, we're actually talking to some developers and our CMO of realestate.com, who gives a few more tips in that space as well. So look forward to those. So I'm thinking about the quality conversation, how people can get ahead of that. What do we think there? How are we getting ahead of the quality conversation as a brand, as a builder, as a developer?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. It's a tough one, because I think it is quite complicated. But I think bringing buyers on the journey of the builds and giving them more context and detail about how things actually happen. One of the things that I thought was really interesting, if we think about the structural issues, say, in the apartments market, how do we show people what goes into a build to help them feel like they are understanding, that you as a builder understand and are doing the best thing you can from a quality perspective?
Yeah.
Because there's stories that we can tell that will help them understand the amount of effort that needs to go into to actually building a house. Like with the rise of the block on TV and all of those kind of reality TV shows, how do we kind of put the complexity almost back into it and show them all of the steps that they need to go through to create a home, because they're almost like washing it down and it feels like, you know, anyone can do this, or, you know, you can tile or you can paint and you can plaster all yourself. But the reality is it's complicated, and I think there's a real opportunity to tell those stories, and you know, and that will feed into that quality story.
I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to say thank you again for your time. That's been super interesting discussion, and it's been particularly interesting seeing some of the parallels that have come out with the new apartments scene as well, and definitely some unexpected parallels, I would say. Next time we're joined by Hampton's Managing Director, Matthew Malseed, to get his take on the power of quality. And until then, thank you very much for tuning in. See you later.